Hello, hello. Welcome once again to another edition of Quoth the Raven, Louis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Louis Bright Raven, 33-year veteran comics career, science fiction author, editor, publisher, and all-around pundit of pop culture fiction. We are doing Tuesday manga talk since I missed yesterday. Had some family business to take care of. I wasn't expecting to have to take care of. So we couldn't do it yesterday. So we're going to get right into it. We're talking about Junji Ito's Alley, Viz. Nice thick book. So let's go ahead and get to it. Alley, a Junji Ito story collection, $25 cover price from Viz Media Viz Signature. Creator is Junji Ito, translator Jocelyn Allen, production touch art and lettering by Eric Urbaiz, cover by Adam Grano, editor Masumi Washington. Genre is horror, age rating is 16 plus, 344 pages with a 6x8 publishing size format, released in July 2024. That's the English US edition. It was released. These were a bunch of short stories that were released over many different years over in Japan. What it's about. This volume collects 10 short stories by master horror manga writer-artist Junji Ito, arguably best known in America for his works UMUZAKI and Tommy. I thought I'd try some of his other work since those stories had been well covered elsewhere. This volume has all horror stories, mostly in the psychological and or body horror motif. Each story is 30 to 60 pages long. Featured in this volume are the stories Alley, where Ashida is a new student who rents a room with Mrs. Uchiyama and her daughter Shinobu. He is surprised that the back alley next to the house is completely fenced off, and as he's going to sleep, he hears children's voices out in the alley. He climbs up onto the wall and calls for them to be quiet, but nobody is there. When he tells Shinobu what happened the next morning, she convinces him that it must have been an echo. However, the following night, he hears someone in the alley calling to Shinobu. Ashida is confronted by a man who lived in the Uchiyama family, or lived with the Uchiyama family before. He says that the reason that the alley is fenced off is because 3 children were murdered there. He found an underground hatch where their bodies were hidden, and he has seen their ghosts from the window. Ashida says there is no window overlooking the alley, but the man tells him there is, and he must uncover the truth. Well, Ashida realizes that the window is actually being blocked by Shinobu's bookcase. So he moves the bookcase, he sees the windows there, and he goes, okay, I'm going to climb down into this alley from a rope and find out whether or not this man was talking about is actually there. And he finds that it is. There's bloodstains on the walls shaped like children. There are also violent, obscene graffiti, and there is the underground hatch that was mentioned. Ashida tries to climb back up to his room, but he meets Shinobu at the window, and she stabs him, and he falls back down and lands on the ground. As a child, she had sealed 3 of her classmates inside the hatch because she wouldn't let anyone else play in the alley with her. When her father discovered what she had done, he fenced off the alleyway, but Shinobu killed more of her classmates and eventually her father as well. The children appear at night as ghosts but can't reach her inside the house. Well, Ashida succumbs to his injuries and dies, and Shinobu climbs down to dispose of him before the sun goes down, but the rope that she climbed down on snapped. It must have got damaged while she attacked Ashida, and it leaves her stranded in the alley. She's unable to get back up the wall to the house, and as the sun sets, the ghosts advance out of the walls and attack her. The next story is Descent. A town has experienced a wave of suicides whereby people leave an incidental suicide note. Monster fans here. Hi, Raven. Yes. Pop Culture says hello. Where is Master Norris tonight? Usually John doesn't do the manga talk. I believe he is doing theater work. And my other co-host, Chris, is at the movies. He'll be back for our second feature after this one at 10:30. He'll probably talk about what he saw in the movie theater as well. Anyway, the second story is Descent, where a town is experiencing a wave of suicides, whereby people leave an identical suicide note saying something strange is going to happen in this town, and then they hang themselves. One victim, Erica, is saved just in time by her husband. Erica is taken to the hospital, and that night, she and many other young patients simultaneously rise from their beds and disappear. Erica is later found draped over a tree branch, but the others are still all missing. Erica indicates that she witnessed something terrible and wants to die, but then she slips into a coma. She begins to levitate at night to the horror of her husband. From then on, she's tied to her bed every night. The townspeople suspect that the missing young people went into a cave near where they were seen gathering. However, the cave is full of water and there's no way to walk through it. The townspeople police want to talk to Erica, but she still isn't conscious. Suddenly, Erica wakes and says, "They're falling down! They're falling down!" Some of the missing people begin to fall from the sky and are killed on impact with the ground. Erica intermittently wakes to announce when they'll fall, but always lapses back into her coma afterwards. The faces of the dead people are twisted in expressions of horror and fear. And I kind of wonder, how could they possibly even there, because they fall from a great height, they just go splat, there's nothing to see. But hey, they do have them set up so you can actually see their faces in the story. So anyway, a homeless man tells Erica's husband that he witnessed where all the missing people went. They gathered on a hill and ascended up into the sky. Erica's husband believes him, but he has no idea what happened or why. Erica's husband returns home to find that the mob has seized Erica. They blame her for what's happening and want to kill her. They knock her husband out and throw Erica from a high balcony. And she doesn't go falling off the balcony. Instead, she announces that all the missing people will now fall down. And her husband regains consciousness just as Erica begins to float and drift up into the sky. She pleads with them to save her because she doesn't want to return to the horrible place, but he can't reach her, and she floats away. As she said, all the remaining missing people now fall down from the sky, all with the same terrified expressions as the previous ones, and we are told the sky threw them down because they could not bear to be in the dreadful place they had ascended to. But Erica's body never falls down, and her husband vaguely wonders if perhaps she will fall from the sky one day. I'm going to go ahead and stop at this point and show a little bit of the artwork. This came out in 2024, Pop Culture. This is the artwork for Allie, the first story. And I'll show a little bit more, of course. He's hearing the kids calling out, and he's like, "Hey, knock it off. Go to sleep. I'm trying to sleep here." He climbs out onto the things. Like, where are they? There's nobody there. This is where he figures out that her bookcase is blocking the window. I got to remember that this goes backwards. And then he sees the bodies in blood on the wall. And she goes, "Oops, I can't get out." Cool ending. And then this is the beginning of the descent, where he finds her trying to commit suicide and takes her to the hospital. And when we say they're falling from the sky, they're falling from the sky. So, like you say, if they even exist, or how are they going to have facial expressions? But they apparently survived enough. I like that. I do like that expression where the guy's back got broken on the edge of the wall. I was like, that's a really good pose. This is where they throw her out the balcony and she just floats. So pretty cool stuff so far. Let me go ahead and get into the next. Oh, here we go. All the bodies coming down at once. And the scary part is there's not just manga. Ito is also an animator. So almost all these stories are actually available in anime somewhere as well. So you can see them that way. So let's go ahead and go on to the next story. The ward, also known as the conversation room. A woman called Hashimoto is in a car accident and awakes in the hospital ward. Sugi, the driver of the other car, is in an exit over and angrily demands that Hashimoto pay for compensation for the damages that have been done to this because the accident's her fault. Hashimoto notices a stinging sensation around her lips and mouth, which the nurse tells her must be an effect of the crash. When Hashimoto goes to sleep that night, she's awoken by someone talking. She soon realizes that it's coming from the other 4 patients in the room, even though they all appear to be asleep. Suddenly, all 4 of them rise from their beds in a trance-like state and file out of the room. Tsuji continues, sleeping soundly. In the morning, the doctor is worried about those 4 patients who are refusing to eat. They also won't leave the hospital because they want to remain together rather than be treated as separate individuals. Tsuji asks to be removed from the ward since she doesn't want to share a room with Hashimoto. She wants to move to Ward 1, which is empty. But she soon discovers that it has been turned into a storage room due to the hospital's lack of patients. Really? That sounds kind of weird, but okay. Anyway, the 4 women encourage her to return to Ward 3 with them. Tsuji and Hashimoto continue to argue over Suji's demands for compensation. Tsuji notices that her face has begun to sting as well, and she thinks she's catching a virus from Hashimoto. She moves into Ward 1 anyway on her own. After she leaves, the stinging on Hashimoto's face stops. Hashimoto awakes that night to find the 4 patients are missing. She thinks it's strange that they do everything together, even though going to the toilet together, and they claim to have the same dreams. Suddenly, she's startled by an strange old man named Mr. Furuta. He says that he is in Ward 2, which is the men's ward next door, and he has broken a hole in the wall so that he can pass between the rooms. The nurse comes in and says, "Oh, what the heck are you doing here? You don't belong in here," and takes him back to his bed. Yep. His work is also an anime. So in fact, one of these things I'm going to end up doing is probably looking for some of these online and share them on movie night, just to see how they get translated. Anyway, Tsuji begins screaming and rushes out into the hallway. The 4 patients are attacking her with long, sharp, snake-like tentacles coming from their mouths. But the hospital staff can't see anything going on, but Hashimoto does. She realizes that the stinging in her face was caused by the patients who were targeting her and piercing her cheeks with their tentacles, and she just couldn't see them before. The doctor and nurse discussed the 4 patients' mysterious case. There were initially only 2 of them who were admitted to hospital because they refused to eat. New people who came to the hospital were frequently scared of them as well. The doctor and nurse agreed to stop feeding the patients via intravenous drip, unaware that the patients are eavesdropping outside. The patients, who are now joined by Sugi, burst into the room and kill the doctor and nurse by using their tentacles to fire sharp needles at them. Hashimoto deduces that there must be some kind of creature. that's using multiple people as its host, and the tendrils must be the central nervous system. So she tries to escape via the hole in the wall between Ward 1 and Ward 2, but the patients soon discover where she is. When one of them corners her, she uses a scalpel to sever the tendrils coming from the woman's mouth. The host body collapses to the floor and dies, giving Hashimoto time to escape from the other 3 or 4 people. She hears the creature taunting her to run and say that if it will find her, because Tsuji had noted the license plate of Hashimoto's car. What does that got to do with anything? But, it's kind of funny. But that's how they end that one. Let's go ahead and take a quick look on that one real quick. This is the beginning of it. You can kind of see they all got blank stares from being linked to each other. Hashimoto and Tsuji side by side, just kind of complaining. Which you would think that you wouldn't put the people that were in accident together side by side in the hospital, but hey, whatever. We're just having fun with the story, right? I like how he draws just, simple stuff. Buildings, hospital beds, things that make sense for what is going on. Just well drawn backgrounds, hallways. There's where all of them start going to the bathroom together. That would be kind of weird to hear the all 4 of them like in pattern walking in, almost in unison to go somewhere. Let's get to the fun stuff. Tendrils coming out of their mouths. They killed the nurse and the doctor. That's where she cut the tendrils off. Only she didn't really use it says a scalpel in the description, but really what she did was she slammed the door, as you can see, and snapped them off that way. And then she's leaving, and like, you better run. We know where you will find you. We have your license plate number. And that's, it's a weird way to leave the story, but it's also kind of cool. Next story is The Inn, where a guy just quits his job and starts trying to transform his house into an inn. And the wife is like, what are you doing? We don't do that. And you're nuts. But let's go a little bit more into the description of that. Mitsuyo Matsuya's father quit his job one day and starts trying to turn his house into a traditional inn. He even digs up the floor because he claims his ancestors have told him in a dream that there's a hot spring there. Finally, he does indeed find a hot spring under the house. However, in the discovery, he gets badly burned. But to the horror of Mitsuyo and her mother, he refuses to get treatment and instead keeps going to turn the spring into a bathhouse. At this stage, her mother, Mrs. Mitsuya, and Mitsuyo leave. In the present day, Mitsuyo recounts her past to a friend, possibly her boyfriend. They don't really explain it. It could be, maybe, maybe not. He shows great interest and wants to visit this inn, but Mitsuyo refuses to go with him and warns of strange customers who were seen around the inn. Her friend goes to look for it and is told that it was closed down by the authorities, but he later finds the inn now renamed Hell's Bathhouse. Hello? McFly! Anyway, Mitsuyo's hideously scarred and burned father says that the inn is still operating, but in secret. Mitsuyo's friend then goes into the building and sees horrendously deformed people all around the inn that he believes are the mysterious customers Mitsuyo spoke about. There's a strange smell in the bathhouse, and the water is completely red like blood. Then he's told that it really is blood and that it comes up from hell. There's a very wide, deep hole at the center of the spring where the steam comes from, and suddenly a skeletal corpse-like person emerges from the spring, and Mitsuyo's friend observes that all the people in the spring look like this. You didn't observe it before? Not quite. They didn't look quite that bad until the feature came out of the bottom there. But anyway, many such people then emerge from inside the hole and climb out of the spring. Mitsuyo's friend realizes that the hot spring is actually a portal to hell. He refuses to describe what happened when the creatures reached the inn upstairs, but he says it was just like being in hell. Finally, he passes out and he wakes up to find the inn completely deserted, the water gone, and smoke and strange sounds coming up from the hole. And that's where they leave it. Pop Culture asks me, are any colored pages in that edition? No, there aren't. It's all black and white. The next story is Blessing, also known as Approval. A young man seeking the blessing of the father of his bride-to-be, but the father keeps refusing constantly, and this goes on for decades. Finally, the old man is going to die, and the man thinks he'll finally be able to wed his lovely woman, who seemingly hasn't aged a day in all the decades he's waited to marry her. And the father on his deathbed explains that the reason he's never approved was because his daughter died as a teenager many years before him as a spirit, and he couldn't approve of such a union, not knowing what it would be to curse the man with such a bonding. He just kept him hanging on because it was the only way he could see his daughter. That's a really weird story, but that's what goes on. We'll go and show some of these stories from the inn first, where he's painting the outside. Where they find the hot spring originally. And he screams because he's all burnt crisp. Looks like Freddy Krueger. He didn't draw him quite that bad, but you can, he should have, right? You get burned in a hot spring. But like I said, he just keeps going and going and going like the Energizer Bunny. And they freak out and leave. And she tells him about it, and she's like, well, I'm not going back there. There he is again when the guy meets him. You see the hot spring of blood. It's a wonder they didn't color it red or something. Like you say, do a little bit of a color switch or something. But you can see the people's head, they're up to their heads around him in the spring. And then they start coming out. Whole bunch of them. Now you'd think this guy would like, once they get out, he's like, I want to get out and leave. But he sticks around for a little bit more. I don't know why. Kind of a crazy person to do that. But and he wakes up, like I said, nope, I wasn't dreaming. There's the hole. There's where the hot spring was. Oh my gosh. And then, of course, blessing. The old man is on the top left. The son, her brother is in the center background, and it's her, and that's the guy up front who's trying to get blessing. And he's tried a couple of times to like break up with her because he's never going to get the blessing. So he's like, I just want to move on with my life. But every time he does, she comes back and tries to seduce him back in. And then when he's old, and they're both old. It's dirt. That's what he tells him, that she was a ghost the whole time. And he's like, okay. He thinks afterwards that he's done, but even after her father's gone, she calls from him from the spirit world to join her. So the next one is Smokers Club. That's about a weird one too. A high school teacher named Shikishima catches a group of his students smoking in the toilet, men's room, boys' room, whatever. He confiscates their cigarettes, which they tell him were given to them by another boy. Called Nakaya, who doesn't go to the school. The students dislike Shikishima because he strongly opposes smoking and always punishes them if he catches them with tobacco. The town they live is in the shadow of a crematorium, and the playground has to be swept every day because of the ash from the chimney. While on the playground duty, Shirai invites a classmate named Kandu to join the tobacco club, which is their secret hangout where they go smoke cigarettes and stuff. Shikishima shouts at them for talking too much, which causes Shirai to worry that their conversation was overheard. But he takes Kandu over to Nakaya's house. Nakaya's room is filled with boys smoking, and Nakaya agrees to let Kandu join them on the condition that he keeps everything a secret. Weirdly, the cigarette smoke is extremely thick and black, unlike anything Kandu has ever seen before. And he's taken aback by the bitter and dark taste of the cigarettes. Nakaya confesses that he makes these cigarettes himself, with leaves taken from outside the crematorium. He chose this location because he had heard that the ashes make plants grow stronger. Kondo was appalled when he hears this, that the cigarettes had been made or had been grown and fertilized by human ashes. But Nakaya figures it's no different than eating the food that's grown around in a town that has the same kind of situation. He talks about the exhilaration of exhaling the smoke and says all he can see before his eyes is darkness. Kandu is horrified when he realizes that all the boys in the room have smoke pouring from their eyes, ears, and noses, and he begs Shirai to leave with him. Nakaya reminds them not to tell anyone, and Shirai and Kandu depart. Kandu knows that the leaves used in the cigarettes can't possibly be tobacco. He tells Shirai to stop smoking the cigarettes, but Shirai dismisses these concerns and denies that he ever saw smoke coming out of anyone's eyes or nose. Shirai has a plan to harvest a new crop of leaves growing beside the crematorium before Nakaya can get to him. He wants to go there and check out what this plant really is. Kandu initially refuses to go, but follows. Pardon me. When Shirai heads off alone, the boys agree that the leaves are real tobacco when they see them. Shirai apologizes for bringing Kandu to the crematorium, remembering that Kandu had just recently attended his uncle's funeral there. They decide that Kandu's vision of smoke pouring from people's eyes must have been a hallucination brought on by Nakaya's story and the trauma of the funeral. However, then Shirai lights another cigarette and the smoke begins to come from his eyes again. When they return to school, they find Shikishima smoking one of Nakaya's cigarettes in front of the class. Smoke billows from his face like a chimney, and he lectures the students not to quit the habit. It's kind of a weird story. Basically, just don't smoke, kids. The next story is Mold. Akasaka is returning from Japan. After spending a year working overseas with this company, his brother Seiji had been looking after his house in his absence, but since Akasaka returned earlier than expected, he's not there to let him in. To Akasaka's dismay, Seiji had been pressured to rent out his lovely new house while he was away, and he gets angry on finding that the tenant's keys had been left in the keyhole, and that his dog has run away, and the electricity is cut off. When he goes into the house, the kitchen and bathroom are infested so badly with mold that Akasaka vomits. Seiji denies all knowledge, and Akasaka is too tired to argue, so he cleans up the mold and goes to bed. I'm like, if this place is so full of mold that you're puking, why don't you just leave the house and just, like, I don't know. It's kind of a weird thing, but yeah, okay. Anyway, while Akasaka was away, the house had been rented out to Mr. Roji, his former high school science teacher and an employee of Akasaka's father, who had been the school's vice principal. Roji had conducted experiments with mold and at one point punished Akasaka for breaking the shelf that held his specimens, even though Akasaka wasn't the one who did it. He had insisted on renting the house while Akasaka was away, claiming that his own family's home had been destroyed in a fire. Akasaka believes that Roji deliberately trashed this house because he holds a grudge against him. He remembers that Roji's family were very strange. His dog growled at the sight of them. Their baby constantly screamed, and even their young children looked old and decaying. But when Akasaka awakens the next morning, he sees that the entire structure of the house has been overtaken by mold, despite being a house that's less than 2 years old. Seiji says that the Rojis had just disappeared one day. He tried to look for them, but they hadn't returned to their former home. The mold continues to worsen, completely consuming the house. Having never seen anything like it, Akasaka believes that it's a new breed of fungus developed by Mr. Roji. Seiji begs Akasaka to move out at once, causing Akasaka to suspect that Seiji knows something. Under pressure, Seiji admits that he came over to the house one day and saw that both of Roji's children were completely covered in the same mold that is infesting the house. It appeared to be growing on them and trailed them wherever they went. He again urges Akasaka to get out of the house as soon as possible. He quickly leaves when Akasaka asks to stay with him. Akasaka guesses that his brother doesn't want to risk being infected. As Akasaka's house continues to decay, the mold develops strange tube-like structures that leak black liquid. Akasaka himself becomes increasingly lethargic and has no energy to leave the house or do much of anything else. He tries to find out where the tubes are coming from and traces the source to a door that he couldn't open before because of the mold. When he finally forces the door open, he finds the hideously mutated corpses of the Roji family. The mold and tubes are growing from their remains. At this point, Akasaka idly scratches his face and tears the skin, unwittingly allowing traces of the mold left on him to enter into his body. And eventually, Akasaka falls victim to the mold's infection, causing his body to slowly disintegrate like the Roji families. He sits alone in the crumbling house, repeating, "Itchy, itchy, itchy," to himself as he scratches the skin off of his face. I'm going to show you a little bit of the Smokers Club here, but this is kind of like the smoke that they're talking about coming out of their eyes and mouth and stuff. This really thick, black, weird looking stuff. It comes out of all of them. And then, that's how much is coming out of the teacher at the end of it. Like, geez, oh, Pete, how much are you smoking? This is kind of what the house starts to look like. Now, why would you stay in something that looks like that? But, yeah. This is when CG saw the babies crawling around with the mold all over them. That's when he starts finding the tubes all over the house. He starts scratching his face, as you can see. Kind of a crazy story in that regard. And then he finally finds their bodies. Okay. Next story is the town of No Roads, also known as Town Without Streets. Sayeko begins having romantic dreams about Kishimoto, a boy in her class. Her friend suggests that Kishimoto has used what is known as the Aristotle theory to get Sayeko to fall for him, breaking into her room at night and whispering in her ear while she's asleep to implant his voice into her subconscious. Sayeko doesn't believe it until her brother says that he heard a boy's voice in her room. And she's like, "I don't have boys in my room. What are you talking about?" But anyway, that night in her dream, Kishimoto confesses to her with a ring, but is subsequently murdered by a man with a knife who calls himself Jack the Ripper. When she awakens the next day, she finds an empty jewelry box beside her. And later that day, Kishimoto is found disemboweled on the street, which freaks her out, of course. Suddenly, Sayeko's family starts behaving strangely towards her, constantly drilling holes in the walls and spying and ceiling to spy on her. When her friends will no longer let her stay with them, she decides to go move and live with her aunt. So she travels via train to the town where her aunt lives, but finds that when she gets there are no buses or taxi services, which forces her to walk. She soon discovers that all the roads are completely blocked by wooden buildings and that all the people in the town are wearing creepy carnival masks. Eventually, a man offers her help, and she finds out that he's going the same way that she is. The man explains that the townspeople woke up to find the buildings had mysteriously appeared, and when people tried to take them apart, they would reappear good as new. Now there are no streets left, and everything is covered in the buildings. People have to walk through them to get anywhere, even though this means frequently going through other people's houses, which kind of strange and freaky when you think about it. He and Sayako are interrupted when they come into a house whose owners have blocked their door. The townspeople, furious, break in and violently beat the inhabitants. Sayako wants to leave the town, but feels like she must rescue her aunt first. She frees the couple living in a blockaded house who have been tied to a pole. And they tell her that the masks are worn to preserve some sort of illusion of a privacy and to protect everyone from the strange new inhabitants of the town. Sayako's aunt lives in an area where there have been many stabbings and killings, and where the strange people have known to begun to gather. For her own protection, Sayako puts on a mask that one of the townspeople have dropped. When Sayako finally finds her aunt, she's nothing like the person Sayako remembers. Aunt Tomei now walks around naked, doesn't wear a mask, and has peepholes drilled all the walls and ceilings, and has completely rejected the very idea of privacy. She wants Sayako to strip and eventually threatens her with a sharp knife. Sayako runs away from her and encounters strange creatures peeping through the walls. They have elongated heads with many eyes, with a peephole for each eye in the walls. I'll show that in a minute. Running outside, she comes across the man she met when she first arrived in town. She realizes from the ring on his finger that this is the Jack the Ripper guy. He confesses to killing Kishimoto and says that Sayako was actually his original planned target. But Kishimoto showed up at the last minute. Jack pulls a knife on Sayako, but is suddenly killed by Aunt Tomei behind him. He throws the knife that she's killed him with into the river and says, "Following the river upstream will take Sayako out of town." Sayako pleads for Aunt Tomei to leave with her, but she simply walks off without another word, leaving Sayako by herself to stumble along the path of never-ending whatever, weird buildings, and try to find the river and find her way out. And even if she does find her way out, what then? It looks like the whole world's becoming like this. But that's the end of that story. So let's go ahead and take a quick look at that one. Starts off with Town of No Roads. And they talk about the Aristotle theory and how he's been talking to her while she's sleeping, more or less. She's getting annoyed at her house because they're always looking and peeping in on her, and she wants her privacy, of course. It's a good theme, losing your privacy. And there's your Jack the Ripper. That's what she dreamed, and then she wakes up and finds out that he was actually killed. I'm going to skip all the family stuff because that's not too important. I want to get to she meets Jack the Ripper, who of course is wearing a mask, so she doesn't recognize him. They're all wearing masks. He kind of escorts her around a little bit. This is where they beat up the couple that don't want them to come in their private area. Now, this one does, of course, show some nudity in this story. I'm sparing the pages where it's just not showing full frontal, but you know, there are scenes where she is exposed that way. So, and here, whoop, here's where they have the elongated peepers. And that's when she leaves her behind, and basically she has to figure out her way out of town. Our next one is called Memory or Memories. Ree does not remember her life from the ages of 7 to 14, save for one memory of seemingly staring at her own hideously deformed face in the mirror with her mother sitting beside her. However, Ree is beautiful, and no one can ever remember her being any other way. There are a few photographs of her during this time of her memory loss, but all of those that exist, they are all showing her looking pretty much as she does now. Ree's parents dismiss her concerns, but she overhears them talking and confirms it's something that she has now forgotten did occur during her childhood. They mention one remaining photo from that time. So she sneaks into their bedroom and finds this photo and sees the hideous face that she remembers. She believes that it's an evil side of herself, like Jekyll and Hyde, that controlled her between the ages of 7 and 14, which is an interesting idea. Rai becomes convinced that she's becoming ugly again and was about to lose her memories. She has a psychotic break and attacks her parents with a knife, screaming at them that they gave birth to an ugly monster, but then they bring a mirror and show her that she's normal. Finally, they tell her the truth. She had a deformed twin sister named Kiko, and her memory is that of her mother comforting Kiko beside the mirror while she watched. Rie became paranoid that she would grow to look like Kiko, and eventually she murdered Kiko in the belief that it would stop her own anxiety. Her parents passed off Kiko's death as a suicide and allowed Rie to forget Kiko even existed. Rie asks Kiko's spirit for forgiveness and dances in front of the mirror, no longer worried that she's going to lose her memories or become ugly. And it's you can tell how shallow this character is, but it's well done, well written. So the next story is the ice cream bus. Single father Sanahara has just removed, I should say, recently divorced Sanahara has just moved to a new town with his young son Tomoki. A couple of days later, the ice cream bus comes around. It's driven by a handsome man who gives all the neighborhood kids free ice cream and then drives them around while they eat it. Well, Sanahara refuses to let Tomoki eat ice cream first because it's winter and you don't eat the ice cream in the winter. But all the other neighborhood kids get the ice cream and ride the bus. The local mothers disapprove of Sanahara being divorced, and they kind of disapprove of him being a single dad. And they all have crushes on the driver on the ice cream bus who started coming to town a month ago. The following week, out of guilt, Sanahara lets Tomoki ride the ice cream bus, saddened that Tomoki has decided he wants to live with his mother instead because he didn't get to go on the bus with all his other friends. Tomoki becomes much closer with the neighborhood kids who ride the bus with him. And so he, kind of gets more and more sullen and stubborn with his dad. He refuses to eat the food that his father makes and doesn't want to live with his mother anymore either, since the ice cream bus doesn't come by her house. Sanahara is like, what in the world is going on with my kid? And why does the bus driver offer kids so much free ice cream? He asks to ride the bus himself, but the driver says no. When Sanahara looks through the window, he sees the kids eating from a huge mountain of ice cream, which Tomoki had spoken about previously. Tomoki is sticky when he comes back from riding the bus, but he refuses to take a bath, and there are puddles of something sticky on the floor in his toys. As Sanahara walks home on a warm spring day, he notices that two young girls are licking each other's skin, giggling and squealing about how sweet they taste. When he arrives home, the hallway outside his apartment is covered in sticky goo. Tomoki's friends have left their shoes outside, but the house is very quiet. So Sanahara goes inside and discovers that the children have all melted away into ice cream, which is and he sees his son Tomoki joyfully licking up from the floor. Sanahara, horrified, tries to drag Tomoki away from them, but only succeeds in pulling off Tomoki's head as Tomoki dissolves into ice cream, and Sanahara screams as the ice cream bus arrives outside. What did I think of all that? Whew. That was the longest damn description I've ever had to write for a comic review. But it did have to be done because each of these stories really deserve to be talked about. Now, obviously, as with all short fiction collections, some stories have outshined others. But of these 10, at least 7 of them are 5-star stories. One is a 4-star, and the other 2 are the weak sauce, how we say, but even those are well drawn. I Say Alley is a 5-star. Descent is a 5-star. The Ward, also known as the Conversation Room, is a 5-star. The Inn is a 5-star. Blessing, also known as Approval, was a 5-star. Smokers Club was a 4. Mold was a 3. Town of No Roads was a 2. Memory was a 5. And Ice Cream Bus is a 5. When you add all that together, it comes to an average of 4.5 for the overall book. And I did really enjoy this. I think it's worth every penny spent and better than any of the horror anthologies that we've been seeing getting done over here in the United States. And you guys know I like that stuff because you've been seeing me review Epitaph of I can't even think of it now, but the Oni books and stuff like that with all the horror comics and Shudder and stuff. And this stuff blows all that content away. It really does. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and show a little bit more of the memory thing. You see how pretty Rai is, even though she has no nose. I do think they kind of need to like draw noses a little bit more consistently, but there's Kiko. How could they possibly be twins, right? She finds the picture. She goes and attacks her parents. They explain that they sent a kid to live elsewhere, and then of course that person, she killed him and stuff. But once she realizes that there's that, she's like, oh, I'm gonna be pretty, I'm fine. Like that's the funny part of it in a way. And of course the last story is the ice cream bus, and there's the ice cream bus, which is a really weird looking thing in its own way. And as he's looking, there's where the girls are looking at each other. And he sees the sludge. What is that? Well, that's basically what's left of the body. One of the kids melted. This is what he walks into. He tries to stop, and of course, like I said, took the head off, just as the ice cream showed. So anyway, wonderful book, excellent collection all around. Yes, it is, and like I said, 4.5. Oh, and even the one really weak story that I thought was weak was the town with no roads, or the town with no streets. It is a spooky as heck idea and concept. I just wish there had been a conclusion to it instead of leaving it open-ended more than anything else. So that's kind of why I kind of gave it that lower score. If it had had more of a closure, I might have given it a better score. I don't know, but it came out like 44 or 45 out of 50, so I got 4.5 overall. But anyway, great book, and so that's that for this week. Next week's topic for Monday Manga, we'll be starting our review of the classic manga series Adam the Beginning, based on original concepts by Osamu Tezuka. This manga is based on the Astro Boy series and is initially set up as a prequel depicting the events up until the birth of Astro Boy. But is it really? Or is there something else going on? Well, tune in next week to find out, and we'll talk about the first 2 issues. There's 10 volumes so far. I'm going to talk about the first 2. Coming up at 10:30, after Chris hopefully gets back from the movie theater, we're going to talk about crowdfunding this week. We're going to check and see out what's on Kickstarter and stuff like that. I think there might be a few questions to ask as well. We'll see what's going on there. Thursday, we have a whole bunch of stuff to review. We have Jump Scare number 3, Galaxy of Madness number 9, Akana Royale number 1, Usagi Yojimbo 10,000 Plums number 3, Captain Planet number 1, the YA children's graphic novel, The Night Librarian. Let this one be a Devil number 3. We're going to review the entire Dawn Runner series. Minor Arcana number 6, I think. I can't remember the full name. Let me check that. I can't read it from there. It's too small. Destroying Angel Lumen number 2, and a lot more, assuming that I don't think John's going to be here this week. He might be, he might not be. But if he's not, then we'll hold off. But if he's here, then we'll also talk about Herculoids and Silverhawks and a few other books as well. And on Friday, our talk will be Marvel Studios, or Marvel Disney Plus, Werewolf by Night, one-shot TV movie. And then hopefully we'll be back on Saturday for live draws. And then Chris and I have been talking, and we're thinking about doing some more content in the future, about possibly doing shows more in the daytime rather than at night. Let us know what you think about that idea, either in the comments or email me at quothravenlbr72@gmail.com and let me know what you guys think of that idea. Because, well, more or less, with Chris doing other things, he kind of wants to do it when he's got no one else at the house, which I can't blame him. So there's that. And then there's just when we're doing multiple podcasts during out the days, it's just easier to do it in some cases during daytime than at night. So we'll see where that goes. Okay. Nope. I'm trying to find something. Silly computers being pain in the butt. There we go. All right. If you have questions, comments, suggestions for projects, or books you want us to review, or shows you want us to review, reach out to me at Facebook at lewis.brightraven, on the Muskrat Channel X at lewisbrightraven2. You can find my artwork at deviantart.com/brightraven. You've been watching Quoth the Raven, Lewis Bright Raven, exclusively on YouTube. If you, again, you can email me at quothravenlbr72@gmail.com. If I don't get back to you at that address, try lewisbrightraven@yahoo.com. That's all for Tuesday Night Manga. We'll see you guys in about an hour and a half for crowdfunding talk, if you're interested. But until then, thanks for watching. See you next time. Quoth the Raven, nevermore.